Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Now here we're going to be talking about multiplying now by negative integers, or multiplying by a negative integer. So far we have dealt with two of the operations out of the four. So we've looked a lot at adding and subtracting. And if you remember from the other series I did, there are another two operations we need to consider, and that is multiplying and dividing too. So when we want to multiply things, let's just have a refresher on what that actually means. So, say if I took, I don't know, three lots of four, for example, what does this mean? Well, this is saying that I have three groups of four. So, what I'm going to do is we talked in my previous series that this is like saying, well, 4 plus 4 plus 4. We have 1, 2, 3 groups of 4. Now, when we multiply by negative integers, this actually doesn't really change it at all in terms of the actual concept of what we're doing. We're going to get a different answer because there's a negative involved, but the way we approach it is exactly the same. Let me give you an example. So, if we took, say, let's do, for example, 3 times negative 4. Now here you can see there's a negative involved, but I'm still taking 3 lots of this number. So based on what we did before, that's like saying that I'm still taking 3 lots of this number, but instead of it being positive 4, I'm taking 3 lots of negative 4. So I have 3 groups of negative 4 all adding together. Let's center this a bit more. So I have 3 groups of 4 adding together. That's what this 3 times means. I have 1, 2, 3 groups. Now, what do we do when we add these? Well, looking at this, you can hopefully recognize from the last video, I'm adding a negative number. So what does that mean again? Well, when we add negative numbers, that's the same as just minusing by this number. So what I end up getting is my first negative 4 doesn't change, but I'm doing negative 4 minus 4 minus 4. So if I get minus 4, that gives me negative 8. And then I want to minus another 4 from there. And negative 8 minus 4, my number's still getting smaller, so I'm going 4 positions in to the left side of my number line. So my answer here is going to be minus 12. So it's very similar to what we did with our regular multiplication, but you can see that this negative led to a negative answer here as well. Now let's look at if the order was flipped, and we'll do another example. So let's do, for example, 2, negative 2 lots of 8. Well, we have with our multiplication, we may remember this is the distributive law applies here. So we could have also taken 8 lots of negative 2 and done this the same way. But just to show you something, this thing here, we can rewrite that as, well, I'm just taking negative 2 lots of 8. That's all I've shown in this particular step here, is that if I take a negative 2 lots of 8, I can just take my 2 lots of 8 and just flick a negative in front of that. So what I end up getting is 2 times 8. I know what that is. That gives me 16. And I still have a negative in front there. And we would have gotten the same thing if I'd done a similar strategy to this first question. We would have gotten to the same answer. We would have gotten minus 16 again. So, what have we observed in both of these examples? We saw that when we multiplied a negative number by a positive number, because remember the 8 here we assume to be positive 8, and the same thing here, we multiplied a negative by a positive, we got a negative answer. So that's our first key idea. So when we multiply a positive number by a negative number, we get a negative answer. We get a negative number as our answer. So this is a pretty important observation we've come to look at. So in both of these cases, any time, and as well as any other time, we multiply a positive number by a negative number, we're going to get a negative solution here. Now let's take this one step further. And based on what we're talking about with addition and subtraction, particularly with negatives, you can maybe start to guess what you think may happen here. But I want to look at what happens when I multiply a negative number by another negative number. So we're taking this one step further. We know what happens when we multiply two positive numbers. We know what happens now when we multiply a positive and a negative. And now we're going to see what happens for the last option, which is when we multiply two negatives together. So let me make this a little bit easier for us to work with. Because this negative 3 times negative 7, we said in the last example, we can think of this as negative 3 lots of negative 7. Let me make these a little neater. Let's use some different brackets. This is like saying I have a negative of the rest of the operation. So that's what I've shown here. I have my negative out front, and I've put the rest of my computation, my arithmetic that I want to do, inside a bracket. So I'm going to deal with this, and then I'm going to apply the negative, see what happens there. So I have in here 3 lots of negative 7. So that's like saying minus 3 lots of, minus, that's like saying minus 7 plus minus 7 plus minus 7. Because I'm taking 3 groups of negative 7. That's what I've shown down the bottom here. And when we work through this, we end up with negative, and when I have minus 7, and here you can see once again we have this plus minus business happening. And we remember from our last video and the previous examples, I can rewrite this as minus 7 minus 7 minus 7. Now here, when I subtract 7 from negative 7, and then I minus another 7 from that, I'm going to wind up with minus 21. And I have a double negative here. So my answer is going to be positive 21. So with two negatives, when I have two negatives involved, I end up getting a positive answer. And that is our final key idea here. When we multiply two negative numbers together, we get a positive answer. These are the main two takeaways when I think about multiplying with negative integers. When I have two negative ones multiplying together, then I wind up with a positive answer. And when I have a mix, so from these examples, when I have one positive, one negative, I get a negative answer. This is how we can go about multiplying with negative integers. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next video.